So with 4 minutes past the starting time, I'm glad to start the webinar. And as you probably know, when you came here, it's about how to use gamification marketing in 2023. So a little bit briefly about myself. I am the founder of Adact. We're now 3 years into the making of enabling customers to do very quickly and efficiently gamification marketing campaigns. But I have actually done gamification for around 9 years now for some of the largest brands in the world. And one of the kind of common thing for, it doesn't matter if you're a large company or a small company, it's always kind of this notion or this idea that when you want to create something that is like interactive and what everybody talks about, then people think it's like a huge project where you need to involve a lot of project managers, developers, and everything. And it used to be the case. And while I was working at a New York's gamification agency called Dopamine, then that was the case. But to be honest, now that I understand and learn what are the mechanics and what are how to actually utilize it, then there's a much more efficient way to do it as well. And that's why we created Adact, to kind of enable everybody to do it. But again, this is not specifically about our company. This is specifically about how can you use gamification marketing. So first of all, as always, if you've been into some of our webinars before, let me just briefly set the scene because everybody might not know exactly what the gamification marketing is all about. So there are different types of gamification that we can use. The thing that we are not going to talk about is how to bring the gamification into a specific, if you have like a health and fitness application, how can you award points and how can you kind of utilize the game design into a specific application? This is an entirely different topic, but what we're discussing here are different types of gamified content that you can use when you communicate with your audience. In short, usually it's done for marketing, but as I'll explain later on as well, there are different approaches. So there are two main kind of categories of how can you simply use gamification. Number one, it is gamified content. That means you have some kind of a content or some kind of articles or some kind of a case study. And then you would want the visitors to interact with that content that you put out. So instead of just reading an article, you would want to engage people to interact with your content. So this is one part. And the second part that we're also discussing are the actual games where you can convert your message, whatever you want to say, into an actually playable game. There are different use cases for both of these, and we'll cover them in the webinar. The key word that ties it all together for both of them, and what I am a huge fan of, is the idea of interactiveness. Now, with the power of interactiveness, where your audience interacts with your content, it kind of opens up an entirely new dimension of kind of engagement and understanding and delivering your message. And how can you use interactiveness through gamification is through activities. Now, when you have an interactive content, when you have some kind of a piece of writing or something, and you would want your audience to interact with it, there are different actions that your audience can do. For example, they can try and memorize something, or they can sort the content. They can kind of guess something that's hidden in the content, or they can kind of produce some opinion or opinionate towards the content. So with the games, also, I don't know how many kind of gamers are there out there, but in games, there are also actions that you can do. You can, for example, you can run, you can aim at something, you can catch some objects, you can jump. But the interaction, like when all of those kind of criteria that I shared, these are all actions, and interactions means that your users are doing it towards your content. So I know it maybe kind of sounds a little bit kind of complicated, not complicated, but kind of convoluted. But it's very important to know that behind each gamified kind of campaign or each gamified thing that we're about to do, there always has to be some kind of an action that your users do. And that action has to be then very closely associated to what do you want to achieve. Now, for example, I just brought in a couple of examples from the campaigns that our clients have launched, or our clients have launched this. So, for example, if the action is memorizing, you would want to memorize the content. Then we can see there you can utilize the kind of a memory game where you kind of have to find the good old memory game. You have to kind of find matching pieces. With the guessing, it's actually number 2 most Googled word in the entire Europe was Wordle. So if you would create a Wordle game around your content where people guess what can be the answer to the question that you propose, then the guessing is the action, right? You're kind of guessing what is the actual word. You can do opinionating. So providing your opinion is the action. So in this example, and I will go through how those examples look like in real time as well, but where you would ask a question and then people have to make a choice. There are, on the bottom row, there are more towards the gaming. So in games, the bottom left one is, for example, a bubble shooter game where you would have to kind of aim and then shoot the specific bubble to get 3 in a row. The middle one is catching, where things are falling down and you kind of have to move the thing that is collecting the things that are falling down. Or jumping, like in Flappy Birds, right? So the game goes and your action is jumping. Now, sometimes it's quite difficult for people to kind of combine or get a full understanding of how those things or how those actions really can be used in marketing. Like, why would I want to kind of create a drop game for my marketing efforts? And that's one other important thing that I want to cover. So the most, what I think creates the most kind of results and most kind of this kind of a communication towards like between your audience and your brand is getting the feedback and being focused while kind of participating in the campaign. And that's why I very much want to focus on the word interactivity, because that is the thing that brings everything together. So very short, I do have an entire course on game design, and I also teach game design as well. But the entire point of why games and why those gamified actions are much more superior to just kind of reading or watching something is the idea that whatever action you do, you always get instant feedback. So, for example, if I look at the previous examples, when the bottom middle one, the catching, when you catch a specific object, then the plus 100 points floats up, right? So that means that if you catch something, then the game or the kind of experience automatically gives you feedback on whether it was a positive thing or a negative thing. So when you do like a word guessing game and you type in your word and you submit it, you automatically and instantly get the feedback of whether you were correct or not. And that's one thing that I always like to say, where kind of life is the worst game out there, because life doesn't give you any feedback at all. You always kind of have to work for the feedback, and you have to provide that feedback for yourself. What games do really well is they're designed to give you feedback instantly. Now, this feedback combined with the kind of actions that you do provide the very, very important thing called focus. It is literally not possible to play a game without being fully focused on the activity that you're doing. It is, however, possible to watch a Netflix series and then kind of zoning out, right? So you're kind of watching a movie and kind of zoning out and not remembering what happened for the past 5 minutes. It is entirely possible to read a book and kind of forget about it, forget the last 2 pages that you read. But it's not possible to take part in a gamified experience without being fully focused and immersed into it. And that's one of the very strong arguments why gamification and this interactive marketing and interactive communication is superior to other kind of forms of communication. Now, as I actually said before, that the key to actually basically the key to produce memories at all, if you would ever want to remember something, then the only part, the most important kind of thing that has to exist are emotions, right? So it's impossible to generate a memory if you don't have any long-term memory, if you don't have any emotion attached to it. Now, gamification provides this active participation, this focus, which in turn, depending on the game, also provides those emotions that are required to produce those long-lasting memories. That is also the reason why when we kind of showcase different solutions or different case studies to our clients, what other companies have done, then very often we hear that, yeah, I remember some company doing this specific game 3 years ago, right? So the only way you'll actually remember playing a game 3 years ago when you were actually actively involved in it and it produced some kind of emotion. Now with gamification, I actually cut one slide out, but the emotion that I'm talking about is, for example, when you have this kind of an open your reward, right? If you know from games like loot boxes or something. But if you have a chest, for example, and you click on it and the chest starts shaking and then it kind of pops up, then this time when the chest is shaking, that produces the anticipation emotion. When you have a game where you have 30 seconds to complete the game and the timer is at 5 seconds left, then automatically you get the emotion of not anxiety, but this kind of a I don't know what's the correct word, but you don't want the time to run out. Maybe you can score some additional points. When you're doing some kind of a guessing or let's say guessing game, like Wordle, the same idea. You put in your word, and when you submit, then because the letters are coming one by one, then that's also this anticipation emotion. This is very hard, if not impossible, to do or to generate amongst people if you just read something. That is why this gamified and interactive content is really, really important. Now, where can you actually use those things? So in short, I'm kind of one of the parts of this webinar is give you the overview, but also I will show you those examples as well towards the second part, and I will even build a couple of campaigns on the second part of the webinar as well. So initially, we started out utilizing those gamification campaigns mostly for marketing. So if you have a new product launch, if you have a new service launch, if you just want to promote some kind of a thing that you're selling or something, then very good on regular marketing campaigns, but add an interactive layer to it. So because the same thing, no other approach really brings that engagement rather than gamification. But the more we've done those things, the more we see our clients using and utilizing this approach in various different sectors, including HR. We have companies who create those gamified campaigns to engage their own employees or to communicate their own values to their employees through interactive content. You can also utilize them in conferences. So we have done them a lot. If you have a demo booth, for example, you attend a lot of conferences, then it is objectively better all the time to have some sort of engagement, some sort of interactiveness in your booth. So what we do is we have our laptop open and have some kind of a gamified this engagement running, which really helps our sales team to kind of engage in a conversation while someone is already kind of actively getting some kind of entertainment and also education out of it. And also learning, it actually kind of combines with the HR a little bit, because what we've also seen is HR departments very much want to use those interactive content to teach their employees about specific, either during onboarding or to teach them about specific procedures in the company. So for example, it's a common nuisance that employees don't know how to file for vacation. So regardless of how many documents you send them, you will always get the same questions coming back. So what one of our clients did was create this kind of a Jeopardy game, similar one that I had in the link before. they will create a Jeopardy game on the topic of vacation, right? So you'll have to go through the entire game and answer each question yourself. If you achieve at least 1,500 points, then you enter into a raffle of some sorts. Doesn't matter what the prize is, as long as there is some kind of a prize. So what we see happening was people who didn't get 1,500 points, they almost every one of them replayed the game until they got 1,500 points. Hence, using this kind of this point system and this kind of this reward system and interactive content together is a very good thing to be used in learning as well. Now, also one very kind of common thing that we need to kind of discuss is, okay, so I'll use the gamification specifically for marketing, let's say, but what then will it actually improve? Why? And again, I'll show you some specific examples later on. But the first thing it will improve almost always is the click-through rates. If you have any sort of ad or any sort of kind of a banner advertisement or anything that directs to a gamified content, then the click-through rate increases. Now the question is why? And the very simple answer is you now have the ability to use the most effective kind of call to actions. Those very effective call to action are when you challenge someone, when you kind of call out someone or kind of test your knowledge, or can you answer all those questions in 30 seconds? Can you beat the high score? So if you provide this kind of a challenging messaging, then that's why the click-through rate usually increases by 4 to 6 times. I wouldn't say usually to 4 to 6 times, but we've seen around, I think every other campaign sees around at least 3 to 4 times higher click-through rates. It's a very simple thing, but you cannot use them if behind the slogan there is no challenge. Now, the second thing that gamification will immensely improve is your retention. Now, the important thing is that once you have a campaign running, then one person comes back every several different days to kind of interact with that content, even if they don't see the ad the second time. So very often you see people bookmarking those pages to come back, and also when they see the campaign second time, they will also come back. The second part of retention is the very heightened engagement. So let me show you some analytics from, let me get my, put myself here. So just some couple of analytics I took from the end of last year, some campaigns that ended. You can see that the average replay count, average kind of re-engagement count for a player is around 10 to 25 times. Now imagine you will have a campaign where one person comes back 25 times to kind of participate and kind of be engaged in your branding. The bounce rate is 10 to 20%. I would say like 10 to 25% is a good thing to kind of expect. But if you're a marketer, then you would know that 20 to 25% of a bounce rate to your landing page that is a specific campaign is very, very high. The third thing that is very high is the average game completion. That means that if you have some sort of interactive content, then you can expect around 90 to 99% of the people who start the engagement to finish the entire engagement, regardless of how long it takes. I wouldn't say regardless, I would say up to 3 minutes, then the kind of game completion is around 99%. The average engagement length per gameplay, as in seconds, is around 50 to 60 seconds. And that is not because people wouldn't want to engage further. That's because what we also suggest is to just have one gameplay be at around 50 to 60 seconds. So what we see constantly is that if you kind of finish at a peak, so during this 50 to 60 seconds, people are already kind of getting the hang of it. And then once the game ends at a peak, then they would want to kind of re-engage and come back. If you drag the game out too long, then it's may be that the person are kind of, already kind of get the hang of it and then don't want to come back. And the last thing, 4.6 days average retention means that one person comes back to that content regularly around 4 different separate days. And you can see some analytics that we put out from the left as well, that it kind of shows you have like 19,000 unique leads gathered with 500,000 gameplay started. You have 1,500 unique leads gathered with 15 to 16,000 games started. So, and also the game completion on the left you can see as well. So one more kind of example that we just took, currently running, we just saw this latest campaign that got launched by Samsung. So gathered around 5,000 different unique leads, but they have started over 100,000 games with very low bounce rate, with very high game completion. And you can also see that the game started over time. Usually you can imagine that you have the spike first and then it kind of continues, drops down. With gamified campaigns, you can see that the engagement lasts throughout the campaign. Sometimes even during the end, it kind of increases. You can also see the buttons pressed. So they also have a play again button, which is clicked 97,000 times. So average gameplay count being at 20.9. Also, one last thing, if you look at the most active players, then you can see that people are playing like 2,000 times, but one game plays 30 seconds. And if you play 2,000 times, that's that is 1,000 seconds, which is, I don't know, like 20 hours or something. So they work very well. Now, of course, what we haven't shown you are the actual examples and how to build something together, which I will now kind of go through. So how to create one? If you would imagine that, okay, so you want to get those results, but you don't know where to start. So before attending this webinar, then usually the thought process goes very similarly to this. So you have around 3 to 6 weeks of kind of getting the idea, then convincing the management, getting the budget approved, having the developers. Some are lucky enough to have their own developers. You will have your project managers, the designers, and the creative to kind of set everything up, and then you will start the development. This usually, from my experience, takes around 3 to 6 weeks and costs around 4,000 to 12,000 euros, not only pure cash, but also in time value and time resources. Now, the largest complaint here, and why people are not doing this, or why I would even not suggest doing it, is most of the marketers are not game designers, and most of the project managers and developers are also not game designers. That means you have to make a lot of decisions on the early stages of the development without actually having any clue what you're doing. We actually have a very, very good case. I'm not going to share who it specifically is, but one of our clients did try to do a custom development as well, which turned out to be kind of a fancy game, but they really screwed up with one specific game mechanic, which turned out that people don't understand how to play the game, and the results were terrible. So this initial investment has to be done before you even know what you're building. And then during the project, you have the development, the testing, iteration, design, the fixing, the decision to even continue or not. So this is the reason why people are not, and companies are not doing this kind of gamification. But now we have other solutions. We can, of course, the same thing, that you actually have to hope that it returns on the investments. And once it does, then you probably will not use the same project again, which is kind of means it's a one-time project. To be honest, with this approach, even though I'm a huge fan of gamification and I know the results, even I wouldn't want to kind of contribute all these resources and effort into it. So now I'd like to show you some live examples and how can you actually create one yourself. So let me see, nope. So I will now share my screen. And while I'm doing it, if you have any questions, if you have any kind of things that you definitely want me to stop on, then do let me know. First, I wanted to show you some additional results just to kind of explain that the things that I showed you on the slides are not just one-time things. So here we can see as well, we have, this game was like huge with 250,000 unique leads, but still with just 23% bounce rates, We have examples of match 3 games with the same thing, 15,000 with 190,000 games started, very low bounce rates. We have examples more and more, and we can see each campaign being very successful. Now, one of the examples I'll show you is actually, instead of showing you an example, I will actually build one from scratch to kind of illustrate the point. So in the software, and again, regardless of which software you use or which approach you use, just in our software, we have around 40 different game types to choose from. There are more coming each day. And there are very specific, exactly as I explained before, there are specific engagement types for specific reasons. So we have questionnaires, which are where you would want to ask some questions, or you would want to have make your content interactive. We have competitive games, which are those actually playable games that you can kind of have a public leaderboard and have some competition around. And there's also some lotteries and puzzles. Now, to showcase some, I will recreate a couple of campaigns that have been created with us. And for the first one, let me see which I will do. Okay, so this is one very simple example. If you are in the kind of a food and beverages or this kind of a topic. So let's say you would want to create a game that promotes your new product. And that product is specifically a drink. So in the software here, I'm not going to go into too much detail into how the software works, because gladly, it's very much self-explanatory. So we would want to create a game where I will catch the flavors of my new drink and then collect them to my own new drink, and the best scorers maybe get some rewards. So what I would want to do is I would want to change the objects that get dropped down. So this specific customer used the flavors of their new drink that are dropping down. So I will just upload them into the software to then show you how it all comes together. So I always recommend, and one thing that you will always get with us as well, we are all kind of game designers. We know which solutions to do. We know how to help you in the game design parts. And one thing that we always suggest is always having something that you have to avoid in these types of games. So what you don't want to get into a drink is a fly. So I will make the fly being a bad object to catch. So now I have the flavors falling down, but I would also want the player image that is collecting those icons. I would want to change it to something else, namely the drink that we are launching. Right, so I just upload the specific image, and now I have those flavors falling inside my drink. What I would also want to do, because this is kind of a summer drink and summer vibe, I would want the background and the kind of feel to be this kind of a beachy or summery thing. So I'll upload the background and have this kind of a beach background added to the game. Now, on top, we see leads and missed. So I wouldn't want to use leads. I would want to use score, how many points you got. And well, let's keep the Adact logo. And then missed is like, how many objects have I missed? Now we kind of have the game ready, but of course, now the question becomes, and very important question, even if you create those engagements, where can people participate? Like, okay, fine, I have this game, but where can we actually use it? So what we always suggest, which brings the best results, and what we also provide, is using a separate landing page directly for the game. So for us, all these games we also provide you with a landing page. So you will direct people, you will direct the audience to one specific page where they can participate. So this is just the default setup. I will use my email, my full name to register, and then I have the specific game. So the question why is because if you hide this game and the ability to play the game in between different sections of your website, then most likely there are a lot of people who either get distracted by other type of content that you have in your website, or they will not find the game altogether. So you will have spend a lot of money on your advertisement, and they will actually click on your ad link, but they cannot find the specific game. So once the entire landing page is designed for only that game, there is only one thing you can do on that site. And that is why our bounce rates are also very low. But if you want to, you can, of course, with us, you can just copy paste the line of code and put this entire experience to your own website. But of course, this is entirely Adact branded. It's definitely not how I would want it to show. So I would want to edit the landing page as well, which I can do here. So I will upload a new background image, the same that they used here. Now, I would also want to change the entire text. I would want to change the text to take part in our game-based competition. I can also add, let's say, reach the top 100 of the leaderboard to participate in the prize raffling. Now, if you want to set up the entire page separately or differently, you can delete all those elements, you can add more stuff. I would always suggest, if you have this kind of a content, don't focus too much on the text on the start screen. The reason is most people do not actively read through this image. And this client specifically also very well followed our guidelines. If you have prizes, then showcase those prizes on your background. As you can see here, if I open the page, then I can already see the prizes that are potentially that I can receive. So people's attention goes to the design, but not specifically to this text. So to kind of further on, maybe I don't want to collect emails and full names. Maybe I just want to collect, I don't know, phone numbers. So here I will quickly just get rid of the email and instead ask for a phone number. And I can also ask for a leaderboard name. The reason for the leaderboard name specifically separately, and we have seen custom development mess with this or like do a mistake, is you are not allowed in European Union, you are not allowed to show emails, even if it started out in public leaderboards. So they have to choose their own name, which they're willing to show publicly. Just GDPR things. So actually, I'll get rid of the phone number and just have the full name and the leaderboard name. Now, I will also add some prizes to it. I will say that if you win the game, if you finish the game with at least 10 points, you will get a discount voucher. And I will say that everybody gets the same code. Let's say 10% off. I can also have unique codes, but I'll just do the 10% off. And I can also do is everybody who wins a prize, they will get an email automatically from me, which I can design, of course, with the specific prize names, the prize codes, and how to redeem it. But now there's only one thing missing. We have the campaign, but we also ask a leaderboard name. So we would also want to show the leaderboard. So at the end screen, I will also add this line here. Thank you for participating in the campaign. Your score was this. And I will add a button to say view leaderboard. Now, this entire thing would have cost me around 15,000 euros and a lot of time consumed. But now I can actually go and publish this campaign. And I have the entire campaign ready. So I will have my full name, I will have my leaderboard name, I will have the game. I think if I collect and miss the objects, then I lose. So I'm at the end score, my score is 400, view leaderboard, and I am number 1 because no one else has played. So there are a lot of different examples as well that I can take from. So I will quickly check whether someone has any questions, and then I'll prepare some examples which have already been created and launched by our clients. just to kind of give you a better understanding of what are all the different possibilities that you can do. If you have any questions, then right now will be a very good time to ask. I will meanwhile take a couple of campaigns to kind of show you what things have been created with us. So some of the games which we always see working very well, one of the best engagement game is this kind of a Candy Crush. So if you want to just focus on pure engagement and kind of introduce your brand and have this brand engagement, brand awareness, then uploading your own Candy Crush and just uploading your own icons is one of the very good approaches to do. This usually has around 20 to 30 replays per player on average. And I suggest doing it around 2 weeks for the duration of the campaign. So one other thing that always very much kind of very, very popular thing is this kind of a trivia format where you kind of ask questions. It's very simple to understand. You kind of have your own questions, have your own your kind of answers. And at the end, which is very important, is when you export all of the analytics later on, you'll also know exactly how each person answered. So we also have the things that always work. If you have an e-commerce or anything, then I would always suggest do any sort of Wheel of Fortunes, any sort of digital advent calendars, digital scratch cards, because the instant win with those coupon codes and prizes, if you have a game and the game reward is a prize, then you are around 2 to 3 times more likely to redeem that prize because you actually want something. If you will just give someone a coupon code or something, then it's less likely they will use it because they got it with no effort. So if you would want to build it here, then the only thing you have to set up are the visuals, say exactly how many sectors you have, and what is the percentage of how probable it is for a specific prize to be won. One thing that I always suggest not to do with the Wheel of Fortunes, don't add a no-win prize. Even like if it's any way possible, then do not try to give a prize to everybody. So with the Jeopardy, as you saw in our example as well, very good if you have several different themes that you want to focus on. So you can customize your own categories, and for each category, you can customize your own questions. So you have your specific questions, which can be images, which can be multiple choice questions. And at the end, if you answer the question correctly, you get the number of points awarded here, just like in the actual game. But if you get it incorrectly, those points get reduced. We also have, so this is an example of a specific scratch card where, very simple, you probably know how a scratch card works, but in here, you'll just upload specific icons that are possible to reveal under the scratch card, and then the system kind of calculates itself how likely it is to win which prize. And then one of my favorite examples, actually, it's called an Endless Runner, which was designed really well. Also, you just drag and drop your own kind of visuals, where you have this kind of a Super Mario type of a game, where you can decide yourself who is running, just drag and drop the images to the software to kind of build the game together and see what is the high score that your audience can get. You can say that you have 3 attempts or maybe 1 attempt, and then kind of engage your audience in that way. You can also include the idea that you can only play 1 time each day, which I actually like in those campaigns, depending on how long the game is. So let me now show you also, there was a question regarding how to use it in a conference. There was a new question of, are the games made for PC and mobile screens? I can safely say that around 80 to 90% of our players are all on mobile. So all of those games work on mobile and PC the same. There are some games which work even better on mobile, but its responsiveness works either way. So let me show you one specific scenario, how those campaigns are used during conferences. and also the results that they brought out. Let me show you. So this is, for example, one case where you can see that there's a conference, there's a demo booth, and there's a large screen in the conference as well, where people can kind of approach. And this specific game was throwing basketballs and trying to land them into a hoop. So you can go to our website. There's Astrobaltic's case study, which kind of also explains, shows some images, and also explains how it went, how many participants were there. But this is kind of a very large screen and very everybody may not have this large of a screen. But to show you what the game actually was, I can now go to campaigns and take it out. The game was called Hoops. And in the game, you'll kind of have to throw specific objects into the hoops to kind of engage people like that. So what we noticed was when people in the conference were kind of listening to other presentations, we could see people playing that specific game while they were actually listening to a presentation. So that is also the second reason why those games are very good to be used in conferences. We have this, an entire article where a lot of customers, so we ourselves used a battle game in the conference. We saw checkout.com using a Wordle game in the conference, where they will also have a QR code to scan to play. We also had a Wheel of Fortune added to a screen where people can kind of interact. We had the Jeopardy of the same company, where people approach their demo booth and play the Jeopardy game. And then there are other examples for trivia games that people can kind of approach in their laptop and kind of play there. The good thing is you can use the same campaign during the conference, but you can at the same time publish it in your social media as well. So it doesn't have to only be one specific thing, or only to be used in one time. So the average cost of Adact recurring internal gamified learning game, it varies so much for the companies that I'm not going to go too much to say on this call. But very good thing is, as I showed you as well, and I'll do one more example to kind of show you, illustrate what can be done. So the example was tower stacking. And the object is, so you'll kind of stack those images on top of each other. And the higher it goes, the more it starts to wiggle and the game gets faster. So there's actually a competitive edge to it as well, like how high can you actually stack this tower with 3 attempts. So the product was pancakes, pancake flowers, which got, so the thing that gets dropped down is this object. Now I know that this image is slightly too large, so I'll make it slightly smaller. Now the ground platform where people are dropping it, it can be this counter, but I know that they used something else, which was this, or here, and slightly higher. Now the background, as I mentioned, is regarding the kind of kitchen. Let's put the kitchen in here. And this icon here, let's get rid of it and replace it with the specific thing that is dropping down. Good. Now on the campaign background, also they kind of followed our guidance and they added the specific prizes that you can win also to the screen. Now to make it a little bit better, let's see if I have, I don't have it yet. Let's take the logo. So this is this company's logo. I'll download this and add this to the game as well. There is a lot of convenient feature put into it. For example, I know that this logo is a white background, so I can just get rid of the background. And now it's a transparent image. And with all that done, I already now have a draft version of a ready-made campaign that usually gets around 25 gameplays per player and is this kind of a highly competitive version of it. Now, not all the time you don't want to do games, because one of our clients, for example, we have a lot of public sector clients. They're using it, for example, European Parliament or the Nordic Council of Ministers or the Unemployment Agency. Maybe they don't want to use those games. So maybe they want to use different kind of questions and trivia-based games. So I will not be able to show you all of them, but regardless of what we choose here, the setup is always as simple. So if we want to create our own Wordle game, then the only thing that I have to change is the question that we ask. So what is the most Googled, or the number 2 most Googled word in Europe in 2022? And the correct answer is Wordle. Now I'll add extra letters and say that the guessing count is like 6. Now I can also add some background to it. Let's see if we have some interesting backgrounds. Whoops, it's a Peugeot created a campaign for us. So, and I can add different animations to kind of make it more fun. I can have some effects, all the other kind of convenience factors. And here, if I showcase this campaign, then I will see the question and I can try and guess what the word is. It shows me what is the correct letter in the wrong position and which letters don't exist at all. So I can start guessing what the correct word can be. This has been used by Guess Our Daily Discount Coupon. And also, just to illustrate the last very important functionality, which is very expensive usually, is we know that we have some people here who are from India, which have maybe use Hindi language. So I can just add another language to the game, and I have the entire campaign translated into different language, which I can also switch between. So as I kind of explained and showed, there are so many different ways that we can do it. And for that, what we always do is, if usually people don't have a very good kind of maybe kind of an idea what to do. So what we do is we always come with the client, have a specific demo where we kind of suggest new ideas, where we compile. I will personally, or some of our team members, will actually take your designs and already create the working examples of a campaign that you could use. We will go a little bit into like, what do you do? And this is all just a part of an introductory demo call. But hey, if you have any kind of additional board game comments, or you would want to kind of discuss further, then do book a demo and let's have a discussion. I will right now sign off.